Good. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we did last week. It's pretty funny, really. Oh, we're good. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I'm calling this Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting of the 10th of February 2020 to order. Proof of publication is available for your review. We begin our meetings with a non-denominational prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. We pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Encourage cooperation from those who are served and from those who serve. Help us to use every willing service and every effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we have a full house tonight, or close to it, so welcome everybody. Before we get started, I want to point out that Vice President Black will be absent this evening with excuse, and Commissioner Holtzman will also be absent this evening with excuse. So for the remaining of us commissioners who are here this evening, we received our minutes from the January 27th, 2020 meeting in our packets this week. I assume everybody has had a chance to go over the minutes, and if there are no questions, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. At this time, on our agenda, we have a place for audience participation on any item on the agenda. Is there anybody at this point who would like to, when that agenda item comes up, speak on that item? Ms. Lenker?
Speak now.
No, when the agenda item comes up. Joan, you're looking for the item regarding the Sheepford Bridge later on? We have that on the agenda tonight, so we'll have you come up during 12D. Anybody else?
I can speak now or then usually.
And it's regarding, we'll do it at that time, if that's okay with you. Is there anybody else that has anything on the agenda they would like to talk about tonight? Okay, hearing no more, we'll move on to our consent agenda, but before we do that, our engineer has an announcement to make of a new employee, I understand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As the board's aware, last September we had a position that we called engineering technician that became vacant, and over the past few months we've kind of retooled that, changed the job description and duties a bit, and went through a hiring process. So it's my pleasure to introduce you tonight our new Public Works Inspector, Glenn McGatz. Glenn's got well over 30 years' experience in construction administration and field engineering, over 20 years with a consultant, and 10 years with the municipality. So I want to front and...
Oh, welcome, Glenn.
Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Commissioner Below, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome. Thank you very much, nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
And good luck in the political foray.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Good to see you again. Nice to meet you.
Welcome aboard, and yeah, don't feel obligated to stick around.
Oh, that's
Okay, sorry to hear.
Sorry to
Two
hear.
in a month, that's a lot.
That's
All
not
right.
good.
Residents, I hope to serve you well. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Anyway.
On our consent agenda this evening, any commissioner, staff member, or anyone in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion can request so now. Is there a request to have any item on the agenda, consent agenda removed for further discussion?
Mr. President, I don't have anything to remove, but I don't think I got any information in my packet on B. Did everyone else?
That is correct. I did not receive that as well.
Okay. I don't remember.
I'm sorry, Dan, that's on the security. We don't normally send anything out
We-
on security increases, do we?
We do when there's a reduction, because there's an inspection to justify the reduction, but there was no reduction in this case. It's just the 10% annual increase on the
Okay.
previous amount.
Okay.
All right, I'm
Standard.
satisfied with that. Thank you, Dan.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that. So the two items on our consent agenda are the tax collector's 2019 yearly report and the SLD docket that was just spoken of, number 2017-02, regarding the security amount of $516,612.62 and a new expiration date of February 10th, 2021. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Under the President, I have two items this evening. One is to approve our check register of January 31st, 2020, in the amount of $323,982.91, and approve a manual check register with a voided check of January 14th, 2020, in the amount of $8,004.
I'd make the motion to approve both of those items.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Letter B tonight is accept a motion to approve the 2019 emergency volunteer tax credit applications.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. I have a question. Are we pretty comfortable, I guess Frank's not here, or Captain Worth, that everybody who, I mean, has been prompted to turn those in? The list seems good, but, I mean, for our first or second year doing this, but it seems like the list is shorter than it could be.
It's actually longer than it was last year by a couple names. The problem with the way the law was written is only firefighters who live in Lower Allen Township can apply for credit for Lower Allen taxes. So, yeah, that limits the pool right then, and then a lot of people don't get, because they're required to make, I think, 3 out of 6 categories. They have to reach a certain level, and a lot of them don't. So there'll be people that come out and fight fires, but they don't do any of the supporting work, or vice versa. They'll come out and do. So, yeah, again, it's more than last year, but I couldn't tell you that everybody that's eligible has applied.
How are these determined eligible?
There is a list of criteria which we adopted by resolution a couple of years ago. And there's 6 categories. I'm not going to remember what they all are, but there's going to meetings, answering calls, doing maintenance work, and holding positions and things like that. They have to satisfy 3 out of the 6 categories. And if they have, then they're eligible. It's up to the chiefs to remind them that they have to have their applications in. I remind the chiefs too.
Do I
It's coming up.
remember that the two companies have different criteria?
Actually, they've all been pulled together, and not only that, but they match the volunteer fire service award program as well. So it's only one set of criteria that all firefighters have to meet to get both of those benefits.
Okay, thank you. I'll call for the question, Mr. President.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Number 7 on our agenda this evening, any business pertinent to the township, discussions will be limited to 15 minutes per person. Is there any issues pertinent to the township you'd like to speak about this evening? So what we ask, sir, is that you go to the podium and you state your name and address, and if you can speak clearly into the microphone,
Best.
that'd be terrific.
My name is Darren Cox. I live at 2002 Wentworth Drive. I came here on September 23rd of last year to discuss the ordinance 2019-002 regarding the parking of recreational vehicles in the township. I come back tonight to renew my call for that ordinance to be changed and to eliminate any reference to the length of the vehicles. As I had stated at that time, as long as such vehicles are properly licensed, inspected, and insured, and are not interfering with the public right-of-ways in any way, I see no reason why the length should be of issue. And I come tonight with a couple other concerned residents who would also like to ask that that ordinance be changed to eliminate that language.
So, Mr. Manager, would you refresh the board on the RV restrictions that we have in place?
That's easier said than done.
Okay.
It's gone back and forth so many times. Basically, if you have an RV of, I think Mr. Cox can help me here, is it 25 feet?
30.
30
I have
feet,
the
okay.
section of the newsletter if you'd like to see.
If it's 30 feet or less, it can be parked on a driveway or an approved pad, as long as it meets all other zoning, like setbacks and things like that. If it's over 30 feet, it cannot be parked in a residential zone on the street or anyplace else longer than, I think it's 72 hours, just enough time to pack, unpack, and clean it.
So even if it's on a pad, it can't be 35 feet long,
Correct.
based on the ordinance, okay.
Mr. Solicitor, is that your recollection?
I've not read it, so Mr. Cox may know for sure, but that sounds correct.
I think,
The 72 hours is clearly correct, and I believe, he has expressed the length restriction.
well, Mr., if you can have Mr. Cox read it, he has it there.
Would you like to read the ordinance?
I have the section of the newsletter. I have the ordinance in my
Or the
belongings.
section that you're
Okay.
referring to, that'd be great. Thank you.
The newsletter read, recreational vehicles greater than 30 feet may only be stored on residential property or residential street for up to 72 hours for the purposes of loading, unloading, or cleaning. No recreational vehicle may have slide-outs open while parked on the public street. And there's also discussion in here about buses and other things, but that's the section that I was concerned about.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commissioners?
I have a question for staff. So, I know this was recently brought up last year, and just curious as to why a 30-foot restriction was placed on RVs on private property. So if someone has the capacity for a larger RV, why are we restricting them to 30 feet?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. That was, I'm not sure how that number came about, but that's what the commissioners decided. I think it was, that number has been in the ordinance for a very long time. I don't know what or who decided 30 feet. All we did was reestablish when they can be parked on the street. That's what the most recent ordinance was about, but that number's always been in the ordinance, 30 feet.
Well, I can cut right to the chase and say that I am not opposed to a longer than 30-foot RV on somebody's property, on a pad. As long as it wouldn't be hanging over a driveway, over a sidewalk or something along those lines. That
Yeah.
it wouldn't be anybody, any tomatoes in the group? None, okay. I wouldn't want it to be a public nuisance. by hanging over a driveway, but if it's in the side yard on a pad, I don't personally have a problem with a longer than 30-foot RV.
And to echo that, I guess my position would also be if it's back out of view of the street, doesn't block traffic, if there's no reason why, the arbitrary numbers there, if someone has the space on the side of their house to put the pad going back, I know we have neighbors in my neighborhood, and they've got trees up in between the pad and the house, so no one actually sees it. So for me, I think, I don't see a reason why we couldn't at least revisit this, maybe bring the ordinance up on the agenda and have discussion with the full board as to the potential to change that. Obviously, with respect to public safety's concerns as to street visibility and maybe there's a certain review process that has to take place to make sure that it complies and isn't in plain view for people in the way of traffic. But as long as it's back off the road, I don't see a reason why to have a specific length requirement.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here that wants to speak on this topic of basically something additional to add? Thank you, Mr. Cox, for sharing that information. And I'm not sure at this point if we would want to talk about this at the next meeting or another meeting, or have staff come up with some proposal as a starting point of discussion.
This comes up, it seems to come up every 2 or 3 years. An ordinance is adopted, and then it's not satisfactory, and it's revisited, and then something else is adopted. I can tell you the reason this was not done on a whim. This is done because we had a lot of residential complaints about RVs parked in neighborhoods. That's why it came about.
I think the on-street was the major complaint.
Well, there are people that complain about them just being there.
Yeah, well.
The board has changed, revisited, change it, however the current board sees fit. I'm explaining why it came about the way it came about.
I would respectfully ask that we wait for a full board to discuss it more, since we're only at 3/5 of the board.
So yeah, I would be in agreement with that. Do you have an idea, how long ago was the length rule established? You say it was a long time ago. I remember now talking about the RV issue, but it didn't really happen. The length didn't come up in that issue. It came up, but we didn't change it at that time in the last couple of years.
We did.
So before that, when do you know approximately how long ago it was that they came up with the length rule?
I have no
Not
idea.
sure.
Maybe
Okay.
John, Evie, do you have an idea on when the length of RVs became an issue in our ordinances?
Unfortunately not. I'm thinking maybe even back into the 1980s.
Okay. So I would probably think it would be a good idea at this point. The issues come up again. We should bring it forth for discussion, at least, at a meeting where we have a full board, and then go from there. And then I'm sure that if there are people out there that are going to have an issue with longer RVs, they're also going to show up and share their concerns, so at least the board can get an idea of where the public might stand on both sides.
Well, to change this again, would take a public hearing, wouldn't it, Mr. Solicitor?
See, I don't know if it was in zoning or just in the, Mr. Eby's shaking his head, so if it's legislative, you wouldn't need a public hearing, but I recall we may have had a public hearing because the issue was controversial, so you may have asked for it even though it wasn't required.
Yeah, I would think, to be fair to everyone, that we would want to advertise that, at least in the newsletter, or somehow advertise that we're going to bring this up again, so that those who would have been concerned about length could come and we could hear all the sides.
I'm in agreement on that. So if everyone up here is okay, I think if we can just bring it up for discussion at the February 24th meeting, that would be.
And Mr. President, if I may add, I'd like to also see if not 30 feet if there are other proposals that staff has an opinion on. If staff says if they don't want to remove a length restriction, but have a compelling reason to tell us maybe 40 feet or something. I don't know what that would be, but just if staff could come forward with a couple of proposals, if we were to consider a change, what a change would look like as well.
We can do that. I can tell you the staff has no
No
preference.
bet.
We don't, I mean,
How long can these things go? How long can they get? Anybody in the audience would like this? And you'll need to speak, please speak in the microphone, please. Could you speak?
so we heard that some of them are over 40 feet.
Over 40 feet?
If anybody wishes to speak, we'll have to ask you to come up to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
podium.
Now,
Okay.
have we had complaints recently about the ones on private property?
Yes.
Okay. Are those things that the commissioners might be privy to?
I mean, typically, we don't report those to the board. I mean, the ordinance is the ordinance, we enforce it, and that's the end of it.
Well, I'm just curious if perhaps without destroying anonymity, if we'd be able to see just a couple things people have said about where it's been an issue or how it's been an issue.
I don't know that those records are available.
Okay.
I mean, we can check, we'll check with the codes department, see if anybody's got anything written, but generally it's email and phone calls.
Okay. All right, so then maybe next week, or wait, not, and, okay, sir. Just come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name's Bill Rawlings. I live on 1936 Chatham Drive. I've lived in the township for over 20 years now. I've had an RV on my property for 15 or 16 of those years. I park it in my backyard. I probably have more money in my RV than most of my neighbors have in their cars. It's registered, it's paid for, I pay my insurance on it. I don't see where the township should be able to tell me that I cannot put that on my property, because what would be next? I can't put a motorcycle on my property, I can't put a boat on my property. I think we have to take into consideration that everyone has a different lifestyle, and as long as you're not infringing on your neighbors, I don't think it should be a problem for them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have some direction at this point to talk about it at the next meeting. Is there any other business pertinent to the township anyone would like to discuss or share? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the township engineer. Dan, you're up.
Okay, got a few items to cover here. Item A, relative to the Gettysburg Road relocation project. Bids were opened on January 30th, and the bids were quite favorable. The low bid was about 3% under the engineer's estimate. The first two bidders were separated by about 1%, and the total of the 6 bidders from highest to lowest was only a variance of about 7%, so it was very favorable bidding. So before the board this evening is action to authorize awarding the contract for that to JVI Group Incorporated. Be happy to answer any
President.
questions.
You want it on the floor and then ask questions? Or you ask questions?
Either way. I would rather just call for the.
Okay, then I move that we award a contract in the amount of $2,037,556.82 to JVI Group Incorporated for the Gettysburg Road relocation project.
I will second. I also have a question, but I will defer to the esteemed Commissioner Shin for his question.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for that compliment, but I don't.
I have a motion and a second, and we have some questions.
Did you have something you wanted, Rick?
I want to say nothing. I just thought maybe there was, well, I opened a can of worms, didn't I?
So I'm curious, so all the bids separated by 1%, or I'm sorry, the lowest bidder and the second bidder by 1%. I'm curious, is the policy always to go with the lowest bid, or are there other factors that you say one company might be better than another and might be a little bit higher? I'm just curious with the 1% difference, if what goes into that process?
Well, that's not a policy, that's the law. Lowest responsible bidder.
Responsible?
Yes.
Right, that's what I was getting at, so.
And in this case, they are pre-qualified by PennDOT
Okay.
for certain types of work and certain size projects. So, and there's actually a rating process that PennDOT uses post-project. So anybody that is eligible to bid through this PennDOT process has been pre-qualified.
Okay, so the pre-qualification from PennDOT is what gets you to the responsible part?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. In that case, Mr. President, I will call for the question.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. B?
Item B is relative to the roundabout construction at Ross Point and Lisburn Road. This is application number 4 from the general contractor, Pensy Supply, Inc., in the amount of $27,597.
Make a motion that we authorize the payment of application number 4 to Pensy Supply Incorporated in the amount of $27,597 for the Lisburn/Ross Moyne Roundabout project.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Dan, I just want to confirm, I think I've asked this on some of these projects in the past. Just want to make sure this is just a pass-through, right?
Yes, yeah, the reimbursement on this
is- yeah,
project.
This isn't coming out of township funds. This is all coming from those projects that have to come through us, and then we make the payments to the
Yes.
vendors.
The majority of this is coming from the funds from PennDOT, and anything that is, if there's any expenses above that, it's paid for by Charter Homes through the
Okay.
reimbursement.
Great, yep. All right, question, I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0.
Item C, also related to the roundabout projects, because there was full-time inspection there required by PennDOT, and these payments get passed through a couple times because they're consultant inspectors hired by PennDOT, and then we reimburse PennDOT, and then PennDOT will reimburse us as part of the project costs because inspection is considered a construction cost. So this is another round of invoices from PennDOT for that inspection.
Mr. President, I move that we authorize payment to PennDOT in the amount of $15,839.90 for construction inspection services for the Lisburn, Ross Moyne, and Lisburn Arcona roundabout projects.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions?
Mr. President, I guess, I know we have it listed as for those projects, but I saw that nowhere on the invoice. And it seems unusual.
You'll see there's lots of numbers on the invoice,
Okay.
project numbers,
Okay.
and invoice numbers, and permit numbers. They're not well identified, which makes our record keeping a little fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
all those numbers line up with those projects. That's the PennDOT way.
This goes back to where can a 600-pound gorilla sit?
Anywhere he wants.
Anywhere he wants to. So they can do whatever they want to with this, right? I call for the question, Mr. President.
Okay, I have one more
I'm
comment.
sorry.
That's okay. And again, this is just funds that are coming through us.
Correct.
Right, got it. All right, I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, item D is relative to the building addition project at the Public Works Facility. Shannon A. Smith is the mechanical contractor, and this is their application for payment number 4.
Mr. President, I move to authorize payment of application number 4 to Shannon A. Smith, Inc. in the amount of $91,045.80 for mechanical construction and public works building addition project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any questions or discussion? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, item E is relative to the Arcona neighborhood development and future phases there. Charter Homes, we understand, is currently working on some future phases for development west of the railroad line and east, or west and north of Ross Moyne Road. Because the sections of the development are separated by the railroad, in order to provide adequate pedestrian crossing there, the conditions at the Ross Moyne crossing need to be upgraded for pedestrians. Currently, they're only for vehicles. There's nothing there for pedestrian accessibility, So Charter is starting that process. It'll be a bit of a lengthy process because it involves Norfolk Southern and changes to the railroad crossing, and any of those get pretty extensive. It will also involve PennDOT approval because it's a state road. So we're trying to get that process started well in advance of any actual development. They've been in contact with Norfolk Southern about that process, and the railroad requires the municipality where the project is located to be the applicant for them to start looking at modifications to the crossing. So Charter had approached us. In order to do that, we would do that contingent upon executing a cost reimbursement agreement with Charter so that any of the costs involved, we will be reimbursed. If we have to submit those to Norfolk Southern, Charter owners would reimburse the township. And that agreement is not completed yet, but it's in the works.
And that was one of the other questions. Still want action on this?
Pardon me?
Still want action on this?
Yes, the board should still authorize us to do that, authorize that agreement and application to Norfolk Southern.
Well, in that case, Mr. President, I would move that we approve the township application to Norfolk Southern for alterations to existing Rockmore Road grade crossing contingent upon execution of a cost reimbursement agreement with Charter Homes.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Dan, I just wanted to, every time, when I was reviewing this over the weekend, every time I see Norfolk Southern on anything now, I remember when I was sitting out there in 2015 or 16, and the issue with Norfolk Southern having to do with the pathway back here, I think. And are we going to go the distance and have them, just kind of toss it out the window? I mean, I feel like gun shy, based on all that discussion, because that just took the wind out of our sails, I think, right?
Understandable, but we can't not do things because of it.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just curious. Does this look like Norfolk Southern's going to work with them?
This is a little more routine or
Okay.
standard. The previous project was something very unusual in how it would relate to their facilities. This is not unusual that a vehicular crossing gets modified or upgraded for a pedestrian crossing.
That's good to know.
So,
Thanks.
so this would be a pedestrian crossing, not just an automobile crossing?
It would be sort of an expansion. If you've ever seen it at the 18th Street crossing, there are actually, because there's sidewalks there, there are actually small gates that come down across the
Okay.
sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be a similar modification out there. Needs to be wider, a little wider pavement for pedestrians, and then some modification to the gate assembly to address the pedestrians in addition to the vehicles.
And based on the community that they've built out there, this pedestrian crossing would be more important now than it would have ever been, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Call for the question?
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, item F is for an SLD docket 2005-22, Heights of Beacon Hill Phase 3. So this has been around for a while. The development is essentially constructed with the exception of two small lots that are kind of difficult to build on, and all the public improvements have been installed except for the sidewalk on those two lots. We have been holding financial security on those, as we do for all public improvements. It was coming due for re-upping that financial security, the annual modification to that. We were notified last Thursday by the bank that has issued the letter of credit that they would not be renewing it. So we've been in contact, been working with the solicitor to get the documents in order so that we can get the proper documentation to the bank so that the township will receive the funds in the amount that's in the letter of credit. So it requires action by the board, and I'll ask Steve to correct me if I don't get that right, to...
You were actually calling the letter of credit, it expires tomorrow. Talk to the Vice President of First National Bank, FNB. She understands that we want our monies, but I need to email it and overnight it to her, including the original letter of credit. But they're well aware that the developer chose not to renew, so we will be timely, but I need the President of the Board, and Mr. Flynn has already provided his certification about the public improvements that were not completed and justify us, calling this through this site draft.
Mr. President, I would make that motion to authorize staff and solicitor to act on the financial security letter of credit for SLD docket number 2005-22 Heights of Beacon Hill, Phase 3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. All right, next on our agenda is Finance, Director Grove.
The resolution that was in your packet puts into writing essential long-term components that were blended together in the 2020 budget process. There are no new decisions contained in this resolution. It's just a codification of those decisions that were made at budget time. It controls future spending growth while maintaining strong financial position and bond rating. The essential long-term components that I mentioned, there are 4 of those. There is the adopted recommendations from the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee, the 5-year capital plan that we've maintained for many years, the long-term fire apparatus capital plan, and the fund balance and fiscal stability plan. And these would be made possible and controlled with, first of all, we would have spending caps. These would be applied to departmental non-capital expenditures, things like payroll, goods and services. It would be 7.5% for public safety, 2.5% for fire. Now, in addition to those caps, these 2 areas would receive the amount needed to pay for the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee recommendations. So they would get money for that plus the 7.5 and the 2.5. All other operating departments would be limited to 5.0%. In addition to that, we had agreed to draw down $1 million of excess fund balance over the next 5 years. And of course, this would be funded by this year's tax increase. But there would be no other tax increases until at least 2022, at which time they would be limited to 0.3 mils annually. Now, this resolution merely outlines a plan. It's essentially non-binding, so it can be modified as needed, but this, putting everything into a long-term perspective makes it a lot easier for staff to plan. It can actually reduce the amount of money we need, and it really is kind of needed to make this year's plan work.
Well, as you probably know, I mean, I really like this idea. I'm sure we're going to have some good, hopefully have some discussion on it tonight. But before we start our discussion, I would prefer to wait on action on this until we have a full board, because of, the nature of it being such an important fiscal policy.
Yeah, that'd be no problem.
So I'm just going to open it up for the commissioners, if there's any questions or discussion you want to have right now or ask.
Well, I just had one question. No, actually, two questions. Does this formal resolution gain Lower Allen Township anything on its face? I mean, is there any, we're always looking for our bond rating and looking for ways to strengthen Lower Allen Township's position in the marketplace. Is there anything that Lower Allen Township gains?
Through this resolution?
Yeah.
Yes, bond rating agencies, and as possible, we would need a bond in the future for fire apparatus, look at long-term plans and the ability of municipalities to stick to those plans. One of the things that really helped to raise us up to where we are now is the fund balance policy that you had in place and that you kept in place even through the recession, which I know was extremely painful, but you did. And the bond rating agencies loved that. So when they see plans and they see people understanding what they want, and they're able to put together a plan to have it go through in the best possible way financially, they love that kind of stuff. So yes, this would definitely be a plus.
Now, people look and say, 26 years in banking, I should know all of this stuff. I was in marketing. So explain what the bond, what does a good bond rating do?
There's a number of benefits. For one thing, all our creditors really look to that because they don't conduct in-depth study like a bond rating agency does. When we go to get a bond, we will have a lower interest rate. The higher your rating, the lower the interest, and that can be substantial over the term of the bond. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. Additionally, if your bond rating is as high as ours, the creditors will not even consider requiring us to have bond insurance, which could be another $20,000. In addition to that, in my opinion anyway, I mean, being a finance guy, it adds to the credibility of the township, and I think it's something the people of the township can be proud of, because it does take hard work to get there.
Thank you, Mark.
I don't have anything right now. I'd like to hold my thoughts for.
I have another question, because, I mean, again, I really like the idea of all of this. It's just, when I was reading through it, I don't understand some of the language, and when I'm reading through it, I kind of get the impression that, to some degree, this takes and kind of puts a rubber stamp on the spending plan, tentative spending plan for the next 5 years or so. And I just want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding this, but every year we decide on our spending plan. And I don't want to take that ability of this board away by having a policy, even if it's a policy that's non-binding. I think the understanding should be that we look at things on a year-to-year basis, and then use whatever policy we're going to have here as a guideline.
Well, it doesn't give the township departments the latitude to spend this money. This would be the cap. We could not propose a budget above these percentages. The board could always override that. I mean, you cannot really put this kind of restriction on future councils or boards rather. So you.
Right, and that
I mean, this is just basically stating a plan. This is saying, okay, staff, use this as you're going forward to prepare budgets. It's not binding you to approve those budgets. I mean, for example, if there's a natural disaster and we have to dump a lot of emergency money into just public safety, there'd be no problem at all doing that. This wouldn't restrict you in any way. Or if you just decided there's additional things that need done, this wouldn't restrict you from doing that either. This is more or less your directive to staff saying, plan this way until directed differently.
Okay, that makes more sense to me. I don't understand some of the accounting logo, I guess, in this. But the other thing that stuck out to me was that regarding the fund balance, of course, the policy of minimum of 15%, which is, a good policy to have. Then there's a recession number in there, right?
That's correct.
Right. Is that recession number explicitly stated in here?
It is not.
Okay.
But it would have the sufficient amount in there to cover a recession without having to raise taxes.
Right, but if we're putting limits on using the excess fund balance through this, wouldn't we know what that excess number should be?
It's always going to be an arbitrary number. In my opinion, $3 million is a safe number to use, and that would be available.
Okay. Maybe if we add things to this, maybe we add a recommendation of that number, so we know what numbers we're looking at.
Oh, you want me to put that into the resolution?
I don't know. I mean, we're having a discussion on it. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
I think it's a changeable number, though. I mean, how often do you want to change your policy?
Oh, I see.
Mr. President of the company, Rick, you mentioned that $3 million, that recession offset shall mean $3 million held as fund balance to be used to offset the loss of economically sensitive revenue in the event of an economic recession. are you saying then that we could actually maybe move away from our 15% of operating budget up to $3 million if we had to? Was that what that's saying?
In my opinion, 15% is not enough. I mean, if we were mostly reliant on real estate tax, I think we'd be fine, but we're not. We're heavily reliant on economically sensitive revenues, building permits, earned income tax, local services tax, real estate transfer tax, things that really bounce around a lot and follow the economic trends.
I guess then I need a little bit of an explanation of that recession offset definition.
Well, we have the economic revenues I just mentioned,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
building permits. So this money would, when there's a recession, those things are going to take a nosedive. And this money, I would see that as being brought into play to recover where we were originally with that until it sustains itself again, the economy recovers.
So I thought I understood that. Now I'm asking, I guess what I'm asking, and I didn't do a good job of asking, is where's this $3 million coming from?
It's already here, it's in fund balance.
Okay, that was the...
Oh, I'm sorry, I understand the question now. Yes,
good.
it's above the 15%.
So
We
it's
have
the
$3 million
the
and
amount
above
above
that,
the 15%.
plus another $1 million that we'll be spending down.
Right.
And that pretty much eats up the entire fund balance.
And then the amount that gives us the AAA credit rating, or that keeps us in those graces with the financial institutions.
That will do it. To get AAA rating, they like to see 30%.
So this doubles
It will
for
be-
that, or not doubles in number, but I mean, this serves that purpose as well.
Yes, we'll be
Okay.
there.
Good. Any other questions tonight?
Well, I'm glad we waited for the rest of the board here to really discuss this.
I did say take action with the rest of the board. I'm sure we'll have some more discussion on it later, but I think you clarified a lot of our questions.
All right, thank you.
All right. So we're going to put that off to at least the next meeting. Next, public safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item on the agenda is the purchase of a replacement for ambulance, what's designated 174. It's manufactured by Horton. You see in the packet that I attached that this was a re-chassis ambulance. It's 7 years old, the chassis, in 2013, so it's a 7-year-old. And in '26, the rear box was added, so that rear box is actually 14 years old. It will, by the time of replacement, sometime late spring, early summer, hopefully have over 100,000 miles on it. And so discussing it with Fleet Manager Reynolds, we thought that it was a good point at which it needs to be replaced so it doesn't continue to create additional repair issues. In anticipation of that, we took a look at the existing 274, the one the board approved last year. The staff's really pleased with it, and they would like to just move on to do another one just like it, brother and/or a sister ambulance. It came in initially under budget at around $258,000, $260,000 with the budget, but one of the things that became available from Ford was what's called a front liquid spring suspension, which was $5,600. That adds to the ride for the patient in the ambulance, and that actually then would, if that was approved, would put it over at around $264,000, just shy of 65. So that's the recommendation moving forward. Attached to the agenda item is the Fund Superior Sales Purchase Agreement, and then it is a co-stars purchase.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
So I make a motion that we approve the purchase, the capital purchase of ambulance I-74 replacement per the information provided us by Director Hall, even though it is over budget.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. I guess regarding the $5,600 that it went over, is there a plan to find that, or?
We'll absorb that somewhere else.
Okay, so it doesn't look like at this point it'll create a deficit.
Could I ask you to rewind for just a little bit? You said something about liking this so much, you're buying a sister ambulance?
Yeah, the board had a tour of the other one. It's a bigger working area in the back. It's a pickup truck front end, it's a 550. So it really, in terms of patient care and workroom in the back, because we use these ambulances essentially mobile intensive care units, and the extra room in the back for working with patient.
So there's another one in the budget, is that what you're saying?
Not in addition to this.
Not this year?
No, well, not even in the future. I think the next ambulance purchase would be probably in 2024. So we bought one last year, which was $274. That's the one that the board toured. out
So we
front.
already have the sister?
We already have the
And-
sister.
okay.
This is actually the sister's
Okay.
sister.
Okay.
But it's, the staff essentially, if we get the same vehicle,
Lot of
equipment
benefits.
stored at the same place, you're working within the same environment no matter which
And
ambulance
that's,
you're in.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. Next.
The last item that I have under public safety, Commissioners, is a request to activate the Civil Service Commission, because we, as remember from our discussion before, we have tapped out our hiring list, and within the budget, we have the July 1st anticipated proposal to hire another police officer. We are participating again with the Cumberland County Police Testing Consortium. They'll be doing on March 28th and 29th their written and their physical agility test. And then after that, we would have to convene the Civil Service Commission, but we have to convene them prior to this, but then we do oral interviews, and the Civil Service Commission attends those oral interviews, and then we're trying to get another list of potential candidates. So this is just a process to formalize the start of that, and we ask the board to approve that activation.
You looking for action on this tonight, then?
Mr. President, I would move to activate the Civil Service Commission for hiring of another officer for July.
second.
I have a motion and a second.
And I have a question. Director Hall, just a brief question. I know we've struggled to have a large pool of applicants, and refresh me, I believe it was December that we changed the criteria for our pool.
Right.
From 85 to 70.
Will change the total number of applicants brought forward change as well. So we're hopeful. The county testing is not putting forward currently a large number of applicants, so we're hopeful.
So, I'm just curious, in terms of our pool applicants, are we expecting that to be a much larger pool?
That's certainly, we're not sure how many are going to apply to take the test, but that's, we'll have to wait and see. But what we did with the change of the rules expanded the possibility. We now are taking not just, we got to cut off at 85%. We're really hurting ourselves by expanding that total number.
Thank you, Director. So I'll call for questions.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. Next is our Community and Economic Development zoning hearing board report. Mr. Eby.
All right. We had a public meeting of the zoning hearing board on Thursday, January 16. Because this is a reorganizational year, they took action to appoint a chair.
and vice chair and reaffirmed some rules. And then they granted a continuance in docket 2020-01, global video that was challenging my refusal to issue a permit for signs that were changed out without permits. Because they found out that the shopping center owner has also filed an appeal challenging my order to remove the signs that weren't authorized, they asked for their case to be continued, waiting the outcome of the shopping center owner's appeal. So that action occurred. The hearing board granted a 90-day continuance and expressed a willingness to grant additional time continuation if necessary. There was one hearing conducted that night. Scott Schaefer of 920 South 29th Street requested a variance to enable him to build a second driveway on his street frontage on 29th Street. He presented all the appropriate information to convince the hearing board to approve that request. Do you have any questions on those two items from last month?
Young, I should know the answer to this, but you made a decision based on the law in Lower Allen Township. The applicant or the business here didn't like it, so they are appealing it to the zoning hearing board.
Correct.
Where does it go beyond there?
Okay. If the outcome is either adverse to the applicant or to the township, it can be appealed to the Cumberland County Court of Common Pleas. My decision was based upon the zoning code currently stating that signs in the C4 commercial district are limited to 40 square feet per face for freestanding signs. This is relative to the V-shaped sign at the curve near the Walmart and shopping center entrance. So I refused to issue the permit because they took down a lawfully non-conforming sign of 72 square feet, put up signs over a weekend without permits that exceed that and are not lawful, because when you take down a lawful non-conforming sign, you're supposed to replace it with a conforming sign, which is limited to 40 square feet.
And it was non-conforming because, like a grandfathered, it was there before the...
It was erected for the restaurant that used to be there when 72 square feet was an allowable sign area.
Got it,
And it was perpetuated by the golf shop and then by the video store.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well, with regard to the non-conforming clauses and rules, in the case where, let's say, the sign's falling apart and they wanted, let's say they wanted to put the 72-foot sign, is it 72 feet?
72 square feet.
Square feet, back up and have a non-conforming sign, it just was falling apart and they wanted to just refurbish it or put a new one up in its place, is that allowed, or does it have to be down for a certain amount of time? How does that work?
Our zoning,
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but because of what I'm hearing is that they had a non-conforming sign, they took it down, and then they wanted to put another one just bigger than it up, or the same size?
they declared it was the same size. It's somewhat larger than 72 square feet.
I see.
There was a 6 by 12 foot panel, or a cabinet that had a changeable message with a fixed message above it, and it's ×2 because it's a V sign. That was voluntarily removed. They replaced it with a 3 foot by 12 foot fixed message on top, and then 4 modules of changeable LED programmable underneath it. Those modules collectively are greater than 3 feet tall and 12 feet long, so they've actually installed more square footage than what was there non-conforming.
Doesn't science enter this somehow?
Just math.
Oh, math, yeah.
So my first question, though, if it was just something that they were fixing or to refurbish because half of it broken apart, I mean,
They would be allowed to repair the sign. If they let a sign become dilapidated
Okay.
and had to remove it, it would have to be replaced with a conforming sized 40 square
Okay.
foot sign. But if it was struck by lightning, run over by a wayward truck, wind gust blew it over, then they would be allowed to restore it. Or if, let's say, for some reason the road had to be widened and a governmental taking required the sign to be moved or replaced, it could be replaced at 72 square feet. But this was a voluntary removal of the cabinet that could, if they had maybe applied for permits, they could have, well, I don't,
Okay.
we're getting into the hearing now.
Understood. And then the latter case, will that one come to us then in a meeting or two?
It's going to the zoning hearing board.
Well, no, the one that was just had for the latter case for the driveway.
Oh, drive,
Is that
no,
covered?
that's a simple zoning permit
So you-
and a
we-
right-of-way
we don't-
permit.
okay.
There's no land development involved, it's a residential driveway. The owner's working with staff to get the stormwater zoning and street cut for the curb opening.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we do have docket 2020-03. That's the application of Capital City Plaza Associates. They own the Capital City Plaza, and they're appealing my decision that the signs that were installed unlawfully need to be removed. Now, I would say in the alternative, if the hearing board upholds my decision, they're asking for a variance to restore the 72 square feet. Now, because they're appealing my determination to remove the signs, we need the solicitor of the township there because I can't examine and cross-examine myself. So I'm asking your authorization for that. I will also add that because their narrative that's attached to their application cites certain legal opinions as to whether my actions were right or wrong, we will need the solicitor to participate to either refute or support different legal issues. And in addition, I would need to make sure there's a very clear, thorough record of what was there and what is there now, so that the hearing board can make an informed decision.
So someone remind me, when we authorize the solicitor to attend, do we take formal action on that, Mr. Manning?
You normally do, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding docket number 2020-03? I would be looking for a motion then to authorize the solicitor to attend that zoning hearing board.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. And to the manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item we have on there is, this is a budgeted item to replace a 2007 Toro infield groomer, which is used for our softball fields, with a 2020 ABI zero turn infield groomer. Cost would be $20,854, and again, it is budgeted.
And it's under budget.
Yes.
Make a motion that we authorize staff to purchase a 2020 ABI zero-turn infield groomer for $20,854 to replace a 2007 Toro infield groomer. This is a budgeted item, and it's under budget.
Second, and I have a question.
I have a motion and a second in discussion.
Mr. Manager, these you mentioned are for softball fields. We have, under the township's control or ownership, outside of what we have a few at Lower Island Community Park and at what are affectionately known as Pete and Church Field off of Gettysburg Road there. Are there others in the township that we're responsible for?
Yeah, Wasp Park. I'm trying to think. There's two out at Wasp Park. Then there's, we have a lot of tournaments and things like that out at Wasp and Lower Island Community Park. Part of the attraction, I guess, is the, which we hear quite frequently about, how nicely cared for our fields are and things like that, so.
No question.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We charge for the use of the field, so that actually helps us attract.
That's what I'm curious is that if the, and certainly there's recreational value to be had in just having it, but my curiosity was just how much revenue we generate annually from the softball fields to offset the cost of caring for them. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Rick, I know those numbers are probably.
I think there was a pretty detailed listing of those in the Public Works annual report at the end of the year.
Yeah, we expect about $3,500.
Per year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we get 13 years use out of it, and 3,500 at 13, it well pays for itself, so good to know. And I'm ready to call for the question, Mr. President.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Charlie, thank you. Your stuff usually comes in under budget. We appreciate it. B?
Item B, loosely related, when we purchase all these new pieces, we like to get rid of the old pieces, and we auction them most of the time. Sometimes they're used as trade-ins, but the First-Class Township Code requires the board to approve disposing of anything over $2,000 in value. So what you see on Resolution 08 in front of you is everything that we expect to sell in 2020. The old stuff we're getting rid of. And I guess, Charlie can talk about this a little bit if he likes, but several years ago, we began using an auction site designed mostly for municipalities, and weren't sure how it was going to turn out, but it's turned out really well for us. We're getting well above what we would get at a local, what I call a ground auction. So,
Do we not do COG anymore?
not for vehicles.
Okay.
Some other things we do use COG.
On all of the items we sell throughout the year, Director Grove, do we come out pretty good with what we budget to recoup on these items?
Yes, we do, actually.
Okay. Thanks. I know that when we do the budgets, this comes up a lot, and make sure that we get the most out of the taxpayers' assets. So thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
I don't think we do.
I don't think we do.
We haven't had a motion yet.
I would
Excuse me,
certainly-
that's
I
right, we
would
were just discussing it.
Certainly move that we approve Resolution 2020-R-08 to authorize the sale of township property valued over $2,000.
I will second, and I apologize, I have another question.
I have a motion and a second with a question.
Just looking over the list, 2016 Ford Interceptor SUV, that just seems awful new, and I apologize if this was before I came on board. I was just curious where that one comes in, as I obviously see the other one, it's 1999, I get why we're auctioning that off. Is there a particular reason we're moving away from that 2016 model?
Do you want to take it? You want me to take it? These are patrol vehicles, frontline vehicles, and they take a beating. That thing probably has close to 100,000 miles on it.
Yeah, I don't know, Charlie might know the total mileage.
It's about 100. It's roughly about 110,000 mile right now. that
Okay,
per
so
car.
for us to see vehicles less than 5 years old isn't uncommon?
Not uncommon.
Okay.
No, in fact, we only finance these vehicles for 3 years.
Got it.
That's just broken in, Charlie. It's broken in.
Perfect. I appreciate you bearing with me with the questions, Charlie. Thank you. Thanks for all your work. And with that, I'm ready to call for questions.
Yep, I finally have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0.
All right, the next item I have on here may be a little bit longer discussion, and I'm going to guess that this is going to be tabled to another agenda when we have a full board here, but there was an idea brought up from a member of our planning commission to ask, we have the gardeners gathering every spring, and every spring there's a seminar, if you want to call it that, there's a talk from somebody about some specific area of gardening or horticulture or something. The suggestion this year was to bring the vineyards at Hershey in to talk about, winemaking, grape growing, possibly even hop growing and beer brewing. Our member who is here tonight, Mr. Angelo, had contacted the vineyards at Hershey, and they're willing to come out, but what they want to know is, A, can they give out samples? B, can they sell wine by the glass? And C, can they sell bottles? Alcohol consumption in the parks has always been an issue with Lower Allen Township, kind of conservative area, and we still require guards security guard if somebody wants to have beer at a picnic. So I thought it was prudent. I love the idea. I think having them come out to do this presentation is great. And as I shared with the board via email, I see no problem with samples. I see no problem with, selling closed bottles for takeout, if you want to call it that, for making it up. But this is really a board's decision on how, you got to balance the sort of the value of the public event with your feelings about alcohol consumption in the park. So I'll shut up and leave it open for discussion.
Well, when I saw this, I mean, I like the idea. I think it's great, especially anytime we can encourage people to get to these gardeners gatherings and that. I think this is a great way to attract people to it, and I think the wine's a great idea. I don't believe that there would be a problem serving the wine by the glass. I don't think that's going to create a problem. I just don't see that happening. But I would, at this point, not be in favor of doing the wine by the glass personally, and then doing the samples and selling the corked product maybe for this first year as a step in that direction, maybe as a compromise. But that's just me. That's my opinion on it.
So I think, Mr. President, your thought, or Mr. Manager thought to wait for a full board is probably a wise one, because I suspect we will have 5 differing opinions here. Personally, I like the idea, and my understanding is this event would be, it's a middle of the day event, right? It's not an evening.
It's a daytime event at Lower Island Community Park.
And they would have,
weekend, I should say.
the proposed wine by the glass sales would have professionals serving it, correct?
Actually, as I said, Mr. Angelo is here tonight. He probably has more details on this than I do, having had spoken to the vineyards. Mr. Angelo, if you want to answer the question, if you can.
Selling the wine by glass session, it was really just what the same that was what we did in our initial discussion talked about, and that was really the kind of the deciding factor of whether or not they would not. They've got to pay somebody to come out and they can sell a couple bottles. That was really like the deciding factor. In the first place, because they didn't really it would be
completely free gratis on their part, and they are a business, so they're trying to, reach new customers. Another thing that, I've talked with their director of operations, her name is Lynn Day. She said that for each person that came out for the gathering and stopped over to their table, they would get a pass to a future wine tour, which they do quarterly. So that's another thing to just bring people out. And if you're worried about the amount of people that are going to be coming, I mean, last year there was 20 people that came to the Gardeners Gathering. So, maybe we get 30 with having a vineyard there. So it's not like this is a real rager.
I think the board may have surprised you. I think the board grabbed it and started running with it.
Right.
And maybe we got out ahead of ourselves. I personally have no problem with what Mr. Angelo just described. Maybe we just keep it, use the KISS method.
So you want to have this again on a future agenda so that the other 2 commissioners can...
What's the time frame like? Do they have to book
The
it? 'Cause I know-
Gardeners Gathering is April 25th. I mean,
we'd be 2 more weeks from now. I mean, I know the wineries, because I deal with a couple of them, they plan these things out in advance.
Right.
Quite a ways, and they book these things, and we might lose it. So,
Yeah,
I would say,
in this case, I remember the feelings of the board members via email. And I don't think, from what I remember reading, that we would have any problem with this.
Right. I think it was just some.
Well, even if
honest
they were
opinion.
against it, it would still be 3-2.
I love your boldness.
There's a politician.
That's
Yeah.
called the majority, isn't it? Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be upset with the outcome
Okay.
way with it. And I'm okay with selling it by the glass. I mean, is that something they're really pushing for?
Oh, no, that was completely new to me. That wasn't even,
Samples.
it was just
and
samples.
Bottle sales.
Yeah, and bottle sales, cork bottle sales.
I just don't believe there's going to be a problem that day, you know, at all.
I mean, it
So-
runs typically from 10 a.m. to noon.
Right.
So if
Right.
we really get a bunch of winos that day,
Day drink.
maybe we'll have a problem, but I don't foresee it.
Make them walk a line. Right?
So, Mr. Manager, are you looking for action on this tonight? And what would that action be?
I think what we're looking for is to allow, if the Vineyards of Hershey comes in to this event, that we allow them to offer samples and bottle sales.
And would it be appropriate perhaps if we authorize that tonight, and then if the Vineyard had interest in doing wine by the glass, we could bring it back up at a future meeting with the full board?
I think that would be appropriate, sure.
In that case, Mr. President, I would make a motion to authorize the Vineyards of Hershey to attend this event and offer samples and bottle sales.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Nothing more than just to thank Mr. Angelo.
Yes, thank you.
For
the more things.
forward thinking. I was very much
Yeah.
encouraged by that.
We have such great parks and facilities, and anytime we can do more stuff like that, it's great. A point out also, well, let's take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. The gardens, the community gardens, I don't know how many people have used those in the last couple of years. I understood it was declining for a couple of years, but certainly encourage people, if you want to garden, there's some really nice fertile soil down by the creek that we lend out, so. All right.
All right, finally, I guess the moment we've all been waiting for. At our last meeting, residents came to speak on behalf of the Sheepford Road. I'm sorry, is there? I can wait until your conversations are finished. They came to speak on behalf of the Sheepford Road Bridge, and there was some information that was, I guess, a little bit of a discrepancy in what the replacement cost would be between what we heard from Cumberland County and what was in a 2017 report that was prepared for York County. And commissioners had asked that we look into that. What the information we received, and I'm sure our engineer can flesh this out a little bit, but the numbers in the 2017 report were, I believe, construction costs only, didn't include design, engineering, and some other, we call static costs or overhead, plus they're stale. So the information that we got from Cumberland County is that their estimate of $1 million is still, in their opinion, the correct number. And they're still convinced that would only bring it up to a 3-ton capacity, not a 15-ton capacity. So that was the information. I'm not saying whether that's right or not. That's the information we're getting from Cumberland County, and that's what the board had asked for. So the discussion tonight, I guess, is a continuation of 2 weeks ago when the board was trying to decide what level of support at all, if there was going to be with York County to consider looking for funding sources to rehab the bridge. That's kind of where we're at right now. We haven't done anything. Well, I should say we haven't done anything. We haven't sent any letters to anybody yet, pending the board's approval.
Well, between the last meeting and now, myself and Carolyn Holtzman, Commissioner Holtzman had an opportunity to listen, maybe to get some more information from a couple folks involved with that project. And they were coincidentally going to be here tonight when I had talked to them. And Mrs. Lunker, this is something you wanted to talk about tonight on the agenda. Can you just fill us in with the most current information between the last time you came and spoke, and now, and whoever else would like to talk on the bridge.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric, E-R-I-K, Arneson, A-R-N-E-S-O-N, at 1950 Sheepford Road. And Joan really has the information, as you mentioned, Mr. Commissioner. And we just also wanted to say thank you. I know that it takes time and effort to gather that kind of information that the manager was just sharing. And we've also received information from your public safety wing, and we just wanted to say thank you for continuing to look into this. Thank you for working with us, and the information that we just got here tonight, we'll take that back and process it, of course, and look forward to continuing to work with you, but wanted to say thank you for the work you've done over these past 2 weeks. Government doesn't always get credit for working fast, but you guys have really taken it seriously, and we appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joan Lanker, and what I have is an outline of things that we have accomplished and things that we plan on doing. I have a copy of a meeting that we had with the York County Commissioners. That was in February the 5th. And I also have a letter to the editor addressing the Sheepford Road Bridge being a destination bridge, and whether it's going to be alive or be in a limbo state at this point. But we are optimistic that it will be alive and well in the future, and we've been doing a lot of homework. Background, we've looked into the Antiquities Act of 1906, the Historic Site Buildings and Antiquities Act of 1935, and the 1976 National Historic Preservation Act, which addresses basically our historical structures and how we should be maintaining them and keeping them for future generations. So that is a letter to the editor. The other letter that I have is from the meeting that we had with the York County Commissioners. We are blessed to have to work with both counties, and it's becoming a little challenge, but we're doing it. So we have just met with them on February the 5th, and despite the closure of the bridge, we are still continuing to solicit interest from residents from both counties. So I have another packet of names. We originally submitted 400 names. I have another 330, so it's a total of 730, and I have over 100 at home. We're kind of keeping the packets together. So this information was forwarded to the York County Commissioners. So they have that total as well. What we did is we addressed to them the governor's initiatives. They have a top priority, and it's a program called Road Maintenance and Preservation. And there's about $2 billion set aside for the commitment to rural communities to improve about 1,100 rural low-volume roadways, which I think Sheepford Road qualifies for that, and the rehabilitation of municipally owned buildings. They also have a program that expands the cost-sharing partnerships with industries, possibly like the pipeline or other funding sources, and we're looking into all avenues of funding. PennDOT also has a program. It's called PennDOT Connect Municipal Outreach, and that's getting our voices and our involvement from the citizens. And unfortunately, back in 2016, when the study was originally planned of what was going on with some of the historic bridges, the citizens really have been left out. So we're speaking loud and clear now, and we want to be part of it. And then there's another program with PennDOT, and it's the Historic Trust Bridge Management Plan. And there's another one, Bridge Maintenance and Cleaning Program. Now I'm going to be giving you all of this, so you have copies, so you don't have to try to remember because I'm going fast. One thing that I found was really interesting is a bit of trivia. The engineering design, we keep stressing how this is a special bridge and a special design. The engineer design of the Phoenix column that is used in this bridge on Sheepford Road became the inspiration for the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. So it's kind of neat that this little bridge had some influence with the design and engineering to influence.
Would you say that again?
And I got this from the Historic Commission. The engineered design of the Phoenix column used in this bridge became the inspiration for the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. And you have a copy of this. So, we got those letters off to the editor and the York County Commissioners. We now have 730 names, people of interest. We literally are going door to door, and it's both York County and Cumberland County. And I will say, there are some that don't want it, but it's very few. So I will put that out there that, not 100%. I'm not keeping tabs of those that aren't interested, but it's very minimal. And if you want, I'll do that, or we can do that, because I'm not the only one knocking on doors. So we also met with Representative Schultz-Delosier to discuss the funding and the current programs within the governor's office and PennDOT, which is the ones I just mentioned. And again, I have this list. And what I'm going to do is mention that we do have our organization website, and we're putting all of this information on our website, so anyone out there can see what we're up to and stay in touch and be involved. But it's the website is www.savesheepfordroadbridge.org. So our next step is we're going to have a meeting of our organization, of the group of us, to kind of see how we can divvy up some of these activities and keep moving forward. We will be meeting with the Cumberland County Commissioners. That's our next goal, to meet with them. And then we are also going to meet with the Fairview Township Supervisors. Now, we haven't met with them. They had a meeting the same night as we were here last time. So we really haven't been able to figure out how to be at two places at once. And I think it's going to happen again on the 24th. So you may not see us, but we'll be over there.
We can give you a pass if you need it to go.
Okay. Okay. We're into fact-finding and partnerships. So we plan on contacting the governor's office and talking to them about the budget. We plan on talking to the representatives at PennDOT with all of these programs that they have identified for restoring our historic bridges and our low volume or the less traveled roads that we do live on. We actually met with Brian Emberg. He is the engineer from Hubert, Rowland, and Gerber. They were there at the York County Commissioners meeting, and they are actually doing the assessment and going to do the final report of the bridge. And they said that it would be about 5 weeks. So that's what I'm hoping, is that they will give us a preliminary engineer analysis and design to produce a construction plan and the specifications and cost estimates, because it's going to get built. We're going to build it. We just have to identify what's wrong with it and where we're going to get the money, and that's going to come in the future. We also plan on contacting the District 8 engineers both in York and Cumberland counties, and we know who they are, and we have information on them. And we are going to be meeting with bridge builders. Ironically, I'll say we, all of us are going around asking for whether they're interested in restoring bridges. I have met a couple bridge builders, and now I find out that Low Bar Associates, which is in York County and Dillsburg, and Deblin Construction, which is in Cumberland County, which is kind of nice. They're both in each county. So we're going to be touching base with them. And then, of course, it's all about the money, as I said before. So we're now looking at how we get grants, charitable contributions, and sponsorships, some avenues where we can get the funding. So it's not, I've heard from knocking on doors, don't raise my taxes. No one wants that. But money's there, hopefully within state and even federal. We haven't even knocked on those doors, but we're going. The other thing we're doing is community activities. So we're hoping that New Cumberland, we've already contacted them. We were thinking of doing a Save Our Bridge on Bridge Street and working with the businesses in New Cumberland, because they are actually being negatively affected by us not going there, because we really have to go out of our way to get there now. And I don't know if the community knows, but also the Slate Hill Road Bridge is going to be shut down in June of this year, and it will be closed for a year. for rehabilitation. So that means we have 2 bridges out that we would normally use, and that, I think, becomes a little bit of an issue. And then we want to have build a Lego bridge and have an event maybe at the park. Well, maybe the kids can come, build with their Legos and build a bridge, just for activities to keep people involved with the bridge and our activities. So there's other things I can go on and on, but bottom line is we still are involved and we want to stay involved. We want you to stay involved and coming up with a resolution that we will be able to drive over that bridge in the future. So my only question I have is, what are your next steps?
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for all the hard work, you and everybody that's putting into this effort. I mean, when I met with you guys, I really opened my eyes. You dot your I's and cross your T's.
We're trying.
And keep everything so organized. And thank you for giving us all those facts. Are there any questions that the commissioners have up here tonight?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to explain that 2 of us met with the folks, because if 3 of us tried to, or more, tried to meet with you, we would be in violation of, it would have, of sunshine. It would
We don't want you ganging up on us either.
Well, good. I just didn't want it to look like there were only 2 people interested.
We want you all to work with us. In the end, that's all we're asking of all levels, is to work with us, because ultimately, we're going to drive over that bridge in the future.
I like your style.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion this evening on this topic?
I know that funding is of extreme importance in this, and so I just want to give you an idea of how some groups have come together before for funding. In the case of the Sheepford Road Bridge, the turnaround that's going to have to be built, we've seen a cost, and I don't know if it's correct, but we've seen a cost of $200,000. If that is, in fact, the cost, in other situations, that money would have been put instead into the restoration of the bridge, rather than if the bridge was open, we wouldn't need a $200,000 turnaround. Also, if that bridge is eventually to be removed, which we certainly hope will never be the case, there's a cost to removing that bridge. And we were speaking before that it will have to be shrouded because it's lead paint. So the cost of removing the bridge, combined with the money for the turnaround, would create funds for like half of the cost of that bridge. And those are just 2 things off the bat. So there are ways to do it if communities come together. And in the past, they have come together on different bridges. So I think you saw a video maybe from PennDOT. We could certainly forward it to you if we haven't, where they showed different cases where communities have come together and all different outcomes. There was one case where they weren't successful, and the poor woman was crying on the video, which we can relate to. But there have been many cases where they've been able to do it just by using funds that would have to be used in case that bridge was to be removed. And of course, our goal is, if no matter what happens to that bridge in the immediate future, we hope that it will remain there, because there's a case of a bridge that was restored a decade after it was closed for traffic. So as long as we have that bridge there, we have the possibility to get our bridge back. And of course, we hope that it's a lot sooner than 10 years. So I just wanted to let you know that there are communities that have come together in all sorts of ways to gather these funds. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Links, I have a question. The dollar amount for the cul-de-sac, I guess is what they're calling it, at least in the presentation when they were here, and then the cost, have they given you solid numbers on that? The county, because the county's doing all that math, right?
That $200,000 is in their 10-year plan, your county's 10-year plan.
I see.
And they had $100 million for the restoration and $2 million to put in another bridge. So it's costs less to restore it. And the $200,000, we'd like to put that into the bridge.
and you're going to communicate that to them when you talk to them, the county?
Your county already knows that, and we will be presenting that to Cumberland County.
Good.
And I'm hopeful that in our discussions with the engineer, because it's most likely going to have to be bid out, we're going to have to put together a request for proposal or something like that to identify really what needs to be done, the specifications. Engineer's going to have to work with that, PennDOT, so on, and then cost estimates. So in order for us to really know where we need to find money, we don't know how much. We want to validate that $1 million. And so we need a lot more specific information, and all the key players I mentioned are going to be playing a part of that. And I have these signatures. More to come.
The more. Thank you. And the, what you gave, and what you gave us before the meeting started, yes, I gave to the manager, and he's going to make sure it gets sent to all of us in our packets. Okay.
There aren't any duplicates, are there?
No, no. We have the original. We will keep the originals. You'll get the copies, and we're keeping tally. So if you really want to validate, what we're giving you, we will have the originals compiled. And they are a combination of York County and Cumberland County.
All right, thank you. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion of our business items on the agenda, but we have commissioner reports, and we'll start with the assistant manager this evening.
This past weekend, we had our second new resident workshop, and it was not particularly well attended. The first time we thought a pretty successful turnout, about 22 people, and this time we had 2, we'll call it maybe 2.5. They brought their kid. He was 18 months. So in light of that, our proposal was to do it every quarter, and I think we decided to regroup, and we're going to do it now biannually. And we're going to do a fall one and a spring one. We think those will hit the good time frames. It'll give us a bigger pool to draw from. Of course, when we were doing it quarterly, when you get into the colder months, less people are buying houses around the holidays anyways. So I think we had a smaller pool to pull from. Of course, they had great feedback because they had a very personalized experience as to what the township offered. But I did want to let you know that we did host that.
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Mr. Solicitor.
Just one quick item. I will be on vacation for your next meeting, so Assistant Solicitor Vicki Ann Trimmer will be in this seat. So,
okay. Thank you. Mr. Shin?
Yes, I have 2 things. One is I wanted to ask engineer, how are traffic light timings decided at intersections?
There's not a short answer to that. Based on traffic counts, and then there's coordination between the different phases. There may be anywhere from 2 to 8 phases in a particular intersection, depending on the movements in the lanes and pedestrian activity and the different things that have to be coordinated.
Here's why I asked. Thank you. That was the Reader's Digest version. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Simpson Ferry Road and Lower Allen Drive. It appears that the Simpson Ferry Road side of it is very short, and the other, and I don't quite understand that. You almost don't even get through it, and it's changed already.
Yeah, one thing that is done on every intersection, there's one road is considered Main Street, and one is considered side street. And in the absence of traffic, the green will default to Main Street until there's a call from the side street. Mm-hmm. And at that intersection, Lower Allen Drive is considered Main Street.
Yeah.
Because of the traffic from the interchange. That's the way PennDOT determined that when the interchange was put in.
Okay.
It may not look that way at all hours of the day based on traffic volume, but that's why it defaults to Lower Allen Drive.
This was Sunday morning about 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I had the privilege, Mr. President and Board, and anyone who else is listening, that I went to the Watershed Implementation Plan meeting, WIP for short, and it was quite interesting. One of the things that the Watershed Implementation Plan looks at is reduction of pollution, flooding issues, and trying to give credit for whatever's already been accomplished. And DEP was there, Cumberland County, and I wasn't the expert, but you know, the MS4, the stormwater issue came up, and we tried to let the folks know, try to get on the table anyway, the fact that the state doesn't seem to care as much about stormwater as the rest of us do. And I asked the hard question and basically got a quick song and dance, and that is, well, that's an interesting question, why they aren't, and we'll look into that. Unlike coming to Lower Allen with the bridge issue, when we say we'll look into it, we really do. I'm not sure they are, okay? But maybe I was cruel and hard on them, I'm not sure. But I appreciated Dan and Mrs. Davis went, and it was an afternoon well spent. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Cook? Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of updates. First is that I attended the Pennsylvania Municipal League's conference for newly elected officials in State College. That conference yielded some good discussions, some good panels, particularly on state ethics laws, as well as budget practices. So I'll be looking forward to implementing some of those tools with the upcoming budget process this year. Secondly, Mr. President, I spoke again with Senator Regan recently, and he's indicated a desire to move forward with the school safety roundtable, and I am all for pushing forward with that and facilitating our discussion with that. So school safety is my #1 priority, and I'm looking forward to fruitful discussion down the road with the board. And just want to also thank everyone who came out tonight. Resident feedback is tremendously important to us as commissioners to make informed decisions for even the smallest issues. So we appreciate all of your attendance and your patience as we sit through and go through our business. One of the things I campaigned on was transparency, and if there's any way that we can make government more transparent for you, I'd like to hear about it. I'm doing my best to meet with everyone about the issues that you've brought up, and if there's any other future issues to come forward before the board, or anything we can do to tell you a little bit more about our process and the information that we have and how we can be more transparent to you. You guys elected us, we work for you, and hope that we can make our process as transparent as possible. So thank you all for coming out tonight, for your thoughtful and candid comments. And with that, Mr. President, I yield back.
Manager? Nothing, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that I will not be available during the day this week as I fulfill my patriotic duty and judge my peers. But I will be here from 5 o'clock until whenever, trying to keep caught up.
Dr. Crowe?
Just one quick update to Commissioner Kutz's previous question on the revenue generated from field use. This is from the 2019 Public Works Report. Total field revenue 2019 was $16,975.
Oh, okay. That's fantastic news, Dan. I was you looked at looking at an infield agreement for $20,000, and you want to make sure there's value in addition to having families be able to come out and play with it. So I appreciate you fetching that in the middle of the meeting.
One thing I'm learning here in Lower Allen Township, and since 2014 when I moved in, that the residents and people who govern the township really care. And this is great that we can come together and solve problems. Commissioner Shin saying that he cares too, would have loved to be in that little hearing that I got to hear, I asked him, not to, we didn't want to have three of us there. And again, we just wanted to listen, just to get the facts. It's an understatement because he and I have been talking about it, and because he knows I'm very close to the bridge, physically. I live close to the bridge, and my wife has a history with the bridge, and Commissioner Shin is calling me often, and we talk about the bridge. And he for him to say he cares about it is an understatement because he really likes that and historical nature of the bridge. So, yeah. Other than that, I think what I would like to see if we can, and I'm not sure how it works, if we can get a couple draft ideas of what some sort of letter of support would look like. I'm sure that we could all come up with different versions of what that would mean, and I'm sure the folks here tonight would maybe have some different ideas, but I wouldn't know where to really begin. So if we can have some drafts or draft maybe come up here shortly that we can start talking about, I would like to do that with a full board for sure, since whatever comes out of the body is going to represent the board.
Well, let me ask this. Do you want the draft to come from 100% staff, or commissioners want to send me their thoughts on what should be in it, or how do you want to do it? Because you're right, there's...
This is why I'm, bringing it up, because I have my ideas and that, but I don't think they're going to fully agree with everybody else's.
Well, I think we could probably provide input if we have. I mean, Tom, I'm not blowing smoke in your ear, but you write a very professional.
Yeah.
You've done this for us before, and I've always appreciated what you've done. Then if there's anything we want to do any board member wants to send something to the manager, they can, but if you don't get anything, don't wait.
Yeah, and maybe a couple of ideas that, I think you have a good idea. We're in discussion that, at least with me, you have a good idea, and I'm sure with the others, and to Commissioner Shin's point, I think we trust your intuition on what you think something would look like, and then we can just tweak it when we talk about it.
Will do.
Is that cool? Mm-hmm. Great.
Oh, and I would just say any resident that wants to send me ideas on what should be in it,
Yeah,
feel free.
That's probably the most
But I'm
important
interested
part.
in knowing what it is. Okay.
Yep, so, great. So that would be wonderful if we can get that moving. Other than that, I just want to point out, Vicki and I, my wife, are going to be volunteering at one of our favorite events that we help at the Lisburn Fire Company this Sunday. It's their bingo. And I tell you what, the only thing missing from the Lisburn Fire Company bingo is the really, really low ceiling and just the cloud of smoke from the old days. It's not there, because they don't allow smoking. But everything else is intact if you want a good old-fashioned bingo, just to come and check it out. They have the old board and the old caller, and the people have their little good luck charms sitting there as their stabbers. It's a good time if you're interested. But that's this weekend at the Lisburn Fire Company. Other than that, we're going to have an executive session. I don't believe we're going to be coming back. It's an update on the Development Authority, right?
That's correct. We don't need to come back and take
So
action.
if there's nothing further, folks, thank you so much for kind of sticking this out tonight, and appreciate everybody's attendance. We're going to adjourn to executive session.
Good meeting, Mr. Manager. Good meeting, Mr. President. Okay.